Hello and welcome to another episode of A Curious Couple. We are the couple that is curious of the world around us because we know that it's the first step in understanding.
I wish that you worked in the Disney parks and like narrated all of the Disney rides.
That would be so interesting.
I feel like you just mess with people and people would be like, what?
What? What did he say? My name's Aaron.
I'm Angie.
And we are so happy to be back with you today.
Woo!
Yes, life got a little crazy. We may or may not be recovering from COVID, but who knows? It's the new normal, right?
It's the new
what they say.
normal.
It's just like the flu now. After it shut down the world for a year and a half, then it turns into the flu. Anyways, today we are diving into a little bit more on the dark side of things. We're going to explore some shadows.
Shadows.
More specifically, shadow work.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a buzz term. I know you've heard it.
Of course.
And I know you've heard of the journal.
Yes, the shadow work journal.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna
It's
get into that.
2024.
Who hasn't heard of shadow work at this point? But the thing with it is it's like those buzzwords that we hear. Like when you hear about faith, prayer, manifestation.
Oh, what's the one that's
healing.
gaslighting?
Yeah, narcissism. You start hearing these words so much and so many people are talking about it. It adds to the confusion.
It does. And so we want to add a little bit more clarity.
And confusion. No, we just want to get into the details on it, what it is, more specifics on how you can use these practices to be happier, really is what it's all about.
Yeah.
It sounds scarier than it is.
It is. And that's... Well, we're going to get more into that.
Yeah, but before we move ahead, we do have a challenge to follow up with.
We do?
We do. Do you remember what our last week's challenge was?
No, I was sick.
No. Oh, man. So our challenge in the last episode, the education episode, was to look at something that you're opposed to and consider it with an open mind.
Yes.
Yes. It's a tough one.
It's so hard.
Well, and it's something that we've been practicing, or I've been practicing for a while now.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's because my pendulum has swung to both extremes.
Sure.
I mentioned in that episode being hardcore left and hardcore right, and now finding myself somewhere in the middle. So it was really interesting. This last week, Angie and I were lucky enough to go see Hamilton at the Eccles. It was a rare date night for us.
It was rare, and it was
so
lovely.
Good. It was beautiful. It was interesting watching this performance, though, because as a theater performer, I found myself, every time I would go to any type of show, analyzing it.
Of course.
Looking at the cast, like, oh, I would play that part. Oh, I would do it so much better than the person that's on stage. Or why are they so lucky to be, I could do that. I'm so talented. And feeling that and sitting with it, it's, I don't know, it's a form of jealousy is what it is.
Right.
And so during this last show, when we went and saw Hamilton, it was something that I was actively trying to observe in myself. And it was so much more enjoyable watching the show without trying to put myself in it the whole time. Like, oh, I could be King George. Oh, I could be George Washington. Oh, I could be Hamilton.
You're too white, man.
That's probably part of it. But no, what I found was I was able to just experience the cast's joy. They were all up there doing what they have worked for and what they love to do. And there's such an excitement and such an energy behind it. And it's something that I've cut myself off to in the past because of jealousy and superiority and wanting to be where they are in many ways.
Yeah.
And so it was really rewarding to turn that off. And I know it's not quite the challenge, but observing those things in yourself of where you hold those grudges or where you hold those jealousies or superiority complexes, it was rewarding. I loved seeing that show.
I did too.
The whole stage was just glowing with energy and love and excitement.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I know the show especially well. I've seen the recording with Lin-Manuel and Philippa Sue and a million times over. I know the soundtrack over and over again. So to just be able to see it and just allow myself to let go of like preconception of what it was going to be and just falling in love with this cast interpretation of it
was wonderful.
Absolutely lovely.
I especially love George Washington.
Oh my gosh, he was
Because,
so good.
well, when he first came on in the Here Comes the General song,
Here
I remember having the thought of like, oh, he's not the strongest singer. I remember thinking that for just a second. And
Right?
it's probably because of the song, just like the cadence and the structure of that song. But in his farewell song, good night.
Good night.
That
guys.
whole theater was shaking with his voice. And
It
it
was
was
so good.
so powerful. And old me would have been so critical of him because I would have seen the slightest flaw of like, oh, he doesn't have this powerhouse voice all the time. But no, it didn't sit with me. I let it go. And then when he did open his mouth and literally shook the rafters,
Right.
I was able to just enjoy it. So
See, and my favorite thing was the girl who played Eliza was just this tiny.
she was so sweet.
She was so.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh. It was basically a My Little Pony of a character where she was just tiny and colorful and
Yes.
just bubbles and happy and light. But then burn happens and just. She still has this beautiful, sweet voice, but to hear the emotion shift, and she's just a phenomenal performer.
I loved it. All I had ever seen was the Disney Plus recording of it. Seeing it live was a whole different
Seeing it live is so
experience.
different, and I was exhausted watching that cast.
Yeah, it is nonstop. Anyways, enough of our
Nonstop.
theater endeavors.
I know we can cut so much of what I was saying. I'm
No,
just
I
excited
love
to talk
all of
about
that.
it.
I love all of that. Let's get into shadow work a little bit. Let's
Shadow
open
work.
that door.
Okay, what is it?
Clear that throat.
So, shadow work, as introduced by Carl Jung.
Yeah.
I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Jung?
I
Jung?
hear so many people say it differently, but yeah,
Right.
it's spelled with a J,
Yeah.
but it's not Jung.
It's not
It's
Jung.
like Jung, but Jung.
Yeah, Jung.
I would say Jung.
Yun.
Jung.
Yun. And then, like, I try and say something in not an English cadence, and it tries to come out Spanish. It's... Guys, never try to get me to do, like, an Italian accent. That's just not going to
Oh
ever
man,
happen.
and through junior high I studied Chinese.
Oh, my gosh.
And learning that NG vowel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Anyways.
Okay, going back. As introduced by Carl Jung, my instant like wait.
Look up.
Involves exploring and integrating the repressed parts of ourselves, often referred to as the quote-unquote shadow. If you are interested in learning more about this after the episode, you can read about his work in the Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious. And there's also this viral TikTok shadow journal that has a lot of excerpts of his work, but it's probably better just to go straight to the source.
Always better to go straight to the source.
Always go straight
Well,
right there. Well, no, it's 2024. Come on, we got options.
I want to talk a little bit about like shadow work in and of itself, because for me, when I first was introduced to this term, it made me think of like Peter Pan when he loses his shadow, or Zelda or Ocarina of Time when you fight the mirror version of yourself, or in Kingdom Hearts, Sora has to fight his
That's
shadow
all I
self.
think of is the shadows.
You think of this pure dark entity that is you, but just shadow. You know, it matches your moves when you're playing it in a game.
Right.
It's usually one of the hardest bosses to fight because it is you. And there are themes of that because the shadow is the self. But it's not as scary or as dark or as painful, I feel, as a lot of people make it out to be. It's like, I don't know, when you hear people talk about it on the social medias, you get this sense of like, oh, shadow work. Oh, it's so heavy.
It's so heavy.
Oh, it's so scary.
Take a shot before you do it.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, man, really rest up before you dive into this. And it shouldn't be that way. It really shouldn't be that way.
it can be because you're talking about things that can be triggering for you and tricky.
The hard part with it is shadow work is really just calling yourself on your own bullcrap.
Yes.
you know, those lies that we tell ourselves all the time, or those insecurities that we have, those are what we're pulling out.
Exactly. I totally missed the definition of shadow in the outline.
You're good.
So
Yeah, why don't we backtrack a little bit, and what would it be defined as, Ange, according to Carl Jung?
According to Carl Jung, it is the negative side of the personality, the sum of all those unpleasant qualities we like to hide. He believed that everyone carried a shadow, and the less it embodied the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is.
Yeah, and again, with these video game references, you see them like coalesce or condense, and then they take material form. And it's true, we all have a physical shadow.
We do.
Just like we all have an unconscious shadow. And the danger with it is when you run from it, or if you ignore it. It just becomes heavier and heavier.
Well, isn't it funny? When when a figure gets further away from the light, the shadow gets larger.
Oh, I've been thinking about that a lot, because
science.
As I've gone through this journey that I'm on, you know, there's been a lot of depression at times. A lot, because it's like, okay, I'm understanding how the world works. I'm figuring out these things, but like life isn't perfect, and you know, it's really lonely. It's really lonely. And I feel bad because when I do open up with somebody, like when I interact with somebody and they're like, tell me about what you've been doing, and I just unhinge. I'm like fire hydrant. Like, did you know? And they're like, okay.
No, it's so funny. It's like, okay, you're sitting down with somebody. It's like, so tell me about yourself. It's like, cool. Do you want to know like my favorite color, or do you want to know all my shit and trauma? Like, well, how deep you want to go?
Yeah. And so
my favorite color's purple.
I've been thinking that a lot. Like, the closer you do, you get to the light, the bigger your shadow is.
Yeah.
But it's also because as you do shadow work and as you do healing in any form or context, it's layered. There's levels to it. You address the big thing, and then once that is addressed, you gain these tools to analyze yourself and to observe yourself in a different light, and then it just gets deeper and deeper. And so I think that has to do with why your shadow feels bigger and bigger. Right.
Oh, and I don't know, it's just an onion, man.
Yes.
You uncover one problem, and it's like, oh, this is related to this, which just continues the layering and layering and layering.
Like, I'm an overthinker.
Isn't it nice that we're complex, though? Wouldn't we be so bored if we were just little...
If everything was
simpleton people.
Right. Oh.
Is that...
Yeah, that
PC?
Works.
Am I okay?
Simpleton people?
I don't know.
I mean, sure. Who knows? Who knows? But it's been really interesting because as we've been studying, especially the Greek mythology.
Yes.
To really see shadow personified. I mean, we've talked about Hercules in this podcast, and I know that he is driven to madness by Hera in the mythology, and he does terrible things, regrettable, horrific things. He murders his wife and children in a fit of madness. If you pull the deities out of that, that could just be the shadow self. That could just be the unconscious self. That could just be the darker nature of rage and anger and hate and lust and envy that bubbled up, that was repressed and neglected for so long that it just blew up in a way that he never could have prepared himself for. And the Greek mythologies are full of this type of thing, with very complex, even the deities.
Oh, yeah.
Are very flawed. I mean, look at Zeus.
I mean, when you marry your sister, things get funky.
Sister that was then eaten and regurgitated by your father.
They got
who was
trauma.
older than you and now is younger.
They got trauma, my friends.
Yes, they do.
That's okay. Cool motive, still murder. It's interesting, though. Jung emphasizes the necessity of acknowledging all this. And to quote him, he says, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate."
Yeah.
Like, I think it's so prevalent. I feel like a lot of people will put these labels on themselves and they just accept that as a part of who they are. And I do that all the time, especially with my anxiety, where it's just like, oh, I can never sit down and relax. I'm just too anxious. I just have too much anxiety. Where in reality, I can master that. It's just going to take work and time. And I'm already so used to being in an anxious state. It's just easier to continue what I'm already doing. I haven't died yet, so I guess it's fine.
Right? Because our brains want to keep us alive. That natural selection, it wants us to stay alive. And the best way to keep on living is to repeat the patterns that have kept you living.
Exactly. And isn't it so much easier to be like, oh, well, I can't accomplish this goal because of this problem, so I guess it just was never meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I was diagnosed late in life with ADHD. And because of that, it gave me a very different perspective on what that diagnosis is and what it means. It's like, okay, that's great. It's not something I can change.
Right.
So it's a label that I can hide behind, or it's just a different set of issues that I have to conquer and master to live the life that I want to live.
Yeah.
And I mean, people are going to have different perspectives and different ideas on everything. And
of course,
diagnoses are real and they're very helpful because they give you understanding. But are you hiding behind something? Are you using something as an excuse? Like, I know people that are like, I just have this deep abandonment wound from childhood, and it's just really hard for me to overcome that. It's like, okay, sure.
That's legitimate.
That's hard. But are you understanding that and using new tools and new strategies to overcome that abandonment trauma? Or are you using it as an excuse to dismiss your poor behavior?
You know who had a lot of trauma?
Who?
Batman.
Yeah.
Batman had trauma.
I mean, yeah.
Up the wazoo. Parents murdered. Fell in a lot of bats in the darkness. And what did he do? He rose and became the Dark Knight and saved Gotham.
Multiple times.
Multiple times from like the worst bad guys, arguably the worst supervillains in the I don't know. I don't want to say DC universe because he also beats out a lot of the Marvel.
Does he?
I think so.
Oh.
Like Joker?
Joker's pretty dope.
Scarecrow?
But I mean, it's like the Beatles.
They're all their songs are hits?
No. You make so many, and some are going to be absolutely fantastic, and others are going to be the biggest flops of the world.
Yeah, give me a good Marvel villain. Other than Magneto. Magneto's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly.
I haven't
Batman.
read the comics, so.
Batman.
But no, it's true. Like, are we going to use that understanding as an excuse to behave the poor behavior, or are we going to rise above?
I have another one.
Oh, hand in the air,
The
excitement.
Secret Garden, my friends.
We've been
reading The Secret Garden with our girls, and it has been so magical. But I'm so frustrated with Mr. Craven and Colin, the little boy who's just been told all his life, oh, you poor thing, you're just an invalid, you're never going to walk, you're never going to do anything, so sad for you, we'll just give you anything you want. And this poor kid, because he's been given this label for so long, he doesn't try anything, he doesn't dream about anything, he doesn't do anything, he just exists because that's all he is led to believe he can do and will ever be able to do.
Yeah.
Like, this kid belongs in the sun and in the roses and in the... I haven't actually gotten to the end, but I know that he gets into the garden.
We've seen the movie from the 90s.
I actually haven't seen the movie either.
No way.
No, but I've listened to the musical soundtrack, so I know what happens.
Okay, it's a fantastic book.
It's beautiful,
It's a
guys.
Great book to read to children.
It's
well,
there's a little bit of racism. It's older.
It is slightly racist.
It's slightly racist. Things don't age well. But going back to the point of this, you can make your weaknesses your weakness, or you can take them and make them your strengths. Mm-hmm. And I think that's at its core what shadow work is trying to do. I think there's this big trend, especially because it's so viral right now, of just shadow work is just thinking about all the bad things that ever happened to me and writing them down and just acknowledging that they happened.
Sure.
And like, yes, that is
Step
definitely
one.
part of the process. But just because you realize that bad things have happened to you in your life, that's part of the human experience. We're all going to go through something to make us grow and change.
Yeah.
So I think it's there's more of a process to it. It's more transformative than just acknowledging that you've had trials.
I would completely agree. One of my favorite definitions of what shadow work really is to be the observer. And I use that phrase a lot.
You do.
But to be like a scientist in a laboratory where you're looking at different items under a magnifying glass.
Fiato.
Where you're looking at things completely objectively. You are not personally connected to the objects of your study.
Yeah.
You're not connected to it in any way, shape, or form. And if we approach our shadow work exercise in this way,
Right.
I think it frees up a lot, because what's going to happen is when we look at the darkness, when we look at the shadow, our ego is going to feel threatened. And so it's
Yeah.
going to rationalize and try to explain why it is that way and why we are justified to continue acting in the way that we have been acting.
Yeah.
Going back to the abandonment wound, yeah. So I've got this abandonment wound and then someone isn't texting me quickly enough, I'm going to flare up. And then when someone's like, hey, calm down, you can't just excuse it and be like, I've got an abandonment wound. Like, what do you expect? It's like, no, bro. What you've got to do is sit with that discomfort, sit with that pain, sit with that anxiety, and not act. Observe it. Don't trigger up.
That's the thing. It's like, okay, if you look at any serial killer,
Where are we going here?
most of them have in common deep childhood trauma,
Oh, they're all
childhood
screwed
issues.
up.
They're all messed up. So do you think that they're in court having murdered multiple people being like, well, my mom didn't say she loved me enough, so well.
That's literally, if you've seen The Jinx
Oh my gosh.
on HBO, that's literally what it is. It's like, well, Robert Durst watched his mom jump off the roof when he was 8 years old.
Which, valid. Like,
Yeah,
that's gonna
terrible.
mess you up.
But then he murders three people, multiple people.
At least 3.
The 2 women and the roommate.
The roommate.
And
That we know of.
And he literally uses that, I saw mommy jump off the roof, as an excuse to get pity from the jury, and when he gets acquitted in Texas. It's double sigh.
Right. And that's the thing. And I know I'm not perfect at it, because I know I have my own issues and things growing up.
We all do.
We all do. So it comes with that frustration of understanding where you may fall short, or understanding where you have problems, and just not using them as excuses and not allowing bad behavior to continue, because we all can grow and be better people. And wouldn't that benefit not just yourself, but the world at large, if you could grow into a better version of yourself?
Absolutely it would. Now, another thing I want to talk about with shadow work is you're not killing the shadow.
No.
You're not removing it completely. It is a part of you. It's inside you. It's always there. You always have a shadow.
Always.
But when you label something as bad or awful or terrible or trauma, whatever label you want to give it, and you start running from it, it chases you.
Yeah.
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 One of the teachers that I've been listening to says that you can't be chased by what you pursue. It's just not possible.
No, you can't. Ooh.
And so if you run towards it, which is what shadow work is,
Yeah.
it's running towards those demons, running towards that darkness and embracing it, because then it's not going to haunt you and it's not going to chase you. And it's funny. I've rewatched the Matrix series recently.
Yeah,
And I'm obsessed with it.
of course.
I liked it as a child, but now I'm obsessed with it.
As a child,
It was the first rated R film I watched.
rated R.
Yeah, but it literally shouldn't have been.
My first rated R film was Oh, what was it? I was going to say Sweeney Todd, but that was not.
It was Prisoners.
No, it's not Prisoners. It was V for Vendetta.
Oh, yeah, V for Vendetta. Okay, these are
Trauma.
great rated R movies. But we were told all rated R movies are of the devil, which...
Join us.
Moral gravity.
Hey, you know what? Hell's going to be a great nerdy time.
This is the bad place. No, what I want to talk about with The Matrix is in the third film, if you've watched it, we've got Neo, played by Keanu Reeves, and then we've got Agent Smith, played by Hugo Weaving.
Yes.
And they are in this Titan versus Titan clash through the whole series. Neo will win, and then Agent Smith comes back stronger. Neo will win, Agent Smith comes back stronger. And Neo is growing every time he does this. He is strengthening. And The Matrix is actually a big metaphor for healing and for fighting the ego.
That should be our challenge.
Yeah, watch The Matrix. That could be a good challenge. No, it's a big... It has a lot of similarities to conquering your ego. Look at Agent Smith as the ego, Neo as the higher self, and yeah, they fight, they confront. But in the very end, the way that Agent Smith is defeated is not in a fist fight.
No.
It is through an embrace. It is through acceptance and through total integration of that ego, of that shadow self, of that darkness. No more running, no more fighting, just acceptance, love, surrender. And that's what solves the problem.
Batman.
Oh, man. So according to Jung, because we want to go back to him because he's really the father of this whole concept, the shadow is often projected onto others.
Yeah.
Which is really difficult because it leads to conflicts and misunderstanding. So he noted that knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people.
Yes.
When we understand the polarity within us, where I am both light and darkness, I am both God and the devil, you see it everywhere. And you stop labeling other people as narcissists because you see your own narcissism.
Yeah.
You stop labeling people as judgmental and selfish because you see your own judgmentalness and selfishness, and you become a lot more accepting and loving and patient with those people because you start to understand, like, hey, we're all on a journey. We're all on this road of
We're all in this together.
No. Well, yeah, but we're all on this road of self-discovery and self-healing. And everyone's just at a different part in the path. So, I mean, like for me, before I started doing this healing work, if I went out anywhere or I had like the worst road rage.
Yeah.
I did. I would cuss. I would flip people off. I would tailgate. I would get so angry if anything happened to me on the road that I deemed as unjust, and I would be like, that piece of crap. And now anything happens to me on the road and it's like, whatever, they're in a hurry. Like, cool. Like,
Right. It's funny that you say that because I feel like so many people universally have labeled their trauma or blame their parents for trauma. And another movie reference for you, Turning Red. The only time that this child in the show is able to understand her mother and understand all the things that her mother is asking her to do and putting her through is when she literally meets her mother's inner child.
yeah.
And is able to understand at that level and be able to walk hand in hand with her. Yeah. And I think, obviously, I'm not perfect. I'm still working on all my own stuff. But the more you understand anything or anyone that has wronged you, anything in life that has wronged you, then you're going to be able to understand on a deeper level.
Yeah, you understand that they're acting out of their own pain, out of their own trauma responses.
Yeah.
And that it had really nothing to do with you.
No.
You were just the person that received the lashing. I love that you bring that up because a lot of shadow work is inner child work.
Yeah.
So maybe we get into that a little bit. Like, what is the process of shadow work? We've kind of talked about why we should do it and what it is. So what's the best way to go about this?
Obviously, everyone does things differently.
Yeah, of course.
But these are just like general, I wouldn't even say general. These are the steps that most people take while going on their shadow work journey.
Yeah, and you can use one of these, all of these, or come up with your own.
Jung says the meeting with oneself is, at first, the meeting with one's own shadow. The shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door whose painful constriction no one is spared who goes down the deep well. So this understanding that this work can be heavy and painful is important. And us being our woo-woo holistic-y selves, it's like, right? We want to have clear energy. We want to have clear mind. We want to have a clear space, be able to give this the proper attention and energy for it. And the first thing that most people do is they start journaling, just getting their thoughts onto paper. It's a powerful tool, obviously, for so many different reasons. It allows you to explore your thoughts, your feelings, and experiences in a safe spot, because then you don't have to say it out loud to anybody. You can write it and throw it away or burn it or anything else. You can reflect on it later. And another practice that you can do within journaling is daily journaling, and setting a time each day to write about your emotions, reactions, experiences, and focusing on those areas where you feel big emotions or discomfort. You can use prompts like, what am I afraid of? I think we were listening to actually a TikTok earlier today where the gentleman on it just asked, what is it about yourself that makes you unwanted?
Yeah.
And that in and of its core is like what your shadow really lives in and thrives on, is the answer to that question if you asked yourself that. So it's asking yourself these bigger questions and writing them down in your own words. If you do get something like a shadow work journal, they do have like guided journal prompts and even space work that you can do, that kind of stuff. But I don't know, I think really just sitting with it and just, for me, a brain dump is always a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that quote that you shared earlier, because I'll just repeat a little bit of it. The meeting with oneself is at first the meeting with one's own shadow. It's really the first step in so much of this healing process, because before you meet your shadow, you're just being triggered and responsive. And to break that cycle, you have to look at the response and really analyze it. And so journaling is a great way to do that. For me, journals never felt safe.
Yeah.
Whenever I would journal, especially growing up, whenever I would journal, they were always, oh man, going back and reading my younger journals, there's a veil.
Yeah.
Because
you're a very good writer.
Well, thank you. But in the culture we grew up with, so much is about journals. Like,
yes.
We read our ancestors' journals and we explore journals of the pioneers and stuff like that. And so it always had this undertone of, my journal isn't safe. It can be read and analyzed by people I know or people that I may not know. And so it always felt like I had to put on a show.
Yeah.
Like I was pretending to be my authentic self. But anyways, so a journal isn't safe for me. It wasn't.
No, I feel like a journal, in the sense that we grew up in, was more of a recording our history.
Yes.
Recording our personal history rather than recording your feelings. Not to mention, do you think it was like a really popular thing in like the early 2000s? Like, I feel like there were so many rom-coms and so many...
Oh, where they'd break in and read their sister's diary or something. Yeah,
or like even like the Princess Diaries. Like, there was so much emphasis on journals. So if that word isn't something that resonates with you...
Yeah. And so for me, I've found a lot more of this work to be helpful in meditation.
Yeah.
That has been a safe space where I'm not worried about... I mean, no one can read your thoughts. People can read your energy, but they can't read your thoughts. And so sitting in these moments in meditation where, again, you're just observing it, you're just analyzing it. You're not going into this self-destructive cycle of, why is it that I always do this? Why am I always A, B, or C. It's because I'm a garbage person. It's because I'm such a failure.
No one here is a garbage person.
No, not at all. But these are before you start this work, if you do analyze it and you're not in an objective place, it's like, oh my goodness, I procrastinated again. I'm always procrastinating. Why am I such a procrastinator? It's because I'm so lazy. It's because I'm so worthless. You get into this self-shame spiral with it, and that does no good. That does no good.
You know, it's funny. It actually just makes your ego feel better because it gives it an excuse for you, quote unquote, failing.
Exactly. And it's these trigger words and excuses of why, and your ego, it'll convince you of why you were justified in being that. Oh, well, I was just really tired. Oh, well, I went above and beyond for this person, and now I can let it drop because they didn't appreciate all that I put into it, or whatever the excuse may be.
Right. It's like you were saying earlier, if you can just take the emotions out of it and observe it.
Mm-hmm. And so that's what I've found to do in meditation, more so than journaling, because it is more of a safe space. And looking at those things. So sitting in the emotion and being like, okay, I feel really alone right now. I feel very unwanted. And why do I feel that way? What's going on? What are the triggers? What are my responses? Where are my thoughts? What am I telling myself? And just observing that in meditation. That has been the most helpful for me. And then changing the inner dialogue, too.
That's hard for me.
Yeah, it's hard for a lot of people. You can't really change the inner dialogue until you're aware of that inner dialogue.
Right.
And so if you do find yourself caught in these spirals of, oh, I've procrastinated again, it's because I'm trash. As soon as you're aware of it, you can change the inner dialogue and be like, no, I'm not. Why am I telling myself that? What does my physiology, what does my body want? Because emotions are just chemicals. Did you know that? Like,
yeah.
When our body feels an emotion, it's a chemical reaction. It's the same as being addicted to drugs. You can be addicted or cheese. You can be addicted to emotions the same way you're addicted to a substance.
Oh, I would argue that we're all addicted to our emotions and attachments.
Absolutely, we are. We love when the emotions kick in. And anyways, so knowing that and just observing that, and then changing that inner dialogue of just, if you can turn off your thoughts, that's money. That's incredible. Keep working at it if you're not able to.
Monetize on that.
Yeah. But if you can't, just change your thinking completely for a few seconds. If you're beating yourself up about your anxiety, listen to some music, or go read a book for 2 seconds, or walk outside and look at the sky, look at the clouds. Just break the pattern for long enough for your higher, more conscious self to kind of step in and be like, okay, why am I beating myself up here? Why am I being so rude?
Yeah, don't be mean to yourself.
Right? You can have imaginary conversations. I do that a lot. That's something I definitely do. I role play and have imaginary conversations in my head.
You should get into acting.
Or sales.
Or sales.
But yeah, just exploring that and talking to that side of yourself.
It's inner dialogue, because my brain is constantly saying things over and over again. Like, that's just part of what I work through. So trying to stop the noise, it feels literally like a chaos tornado. So for me, something that works really well is creative expression, because I'm a nerd like that. And this looks different for everybody. Some people, they can paint. Some people do sculptures. Oh my goodness. We have the most phenomenal artist friend, Maddie. Her work is absolutely beautiful, but she's dealt with a lot of incredible demons.
Like we all have.
And she's been able to express these in these beautiful mixed art sculptures, to the point where she was showing us one of her collections, and I was brought to tears when it was talking about anxiety and depression, and being able to put a physical, like an actual picture in my brain of what that feels like be able to like tangibly see and hold that.
Yeah.
was phenomenal. So if you can't create something yourself, being able to find something that relates to that. I think that's another thing with any of my nerd fandom people. When we have those comfort characters that we have, it's really just finding someone else that has had similar experiences that you have, or you have felt similar emotions that they are dealing with. It doesn't have to be the same situation, but be able to find that creative outlet to be able to remove yourself and be able to see it from an outside perspective rather than experiencing it all inside.
Become the observer.
Becoming the observer.
Oh, no.
Oh, man.
If you're not as creative, I just want to say, like, because I'm not as visually creative. I like to act and write.
Sure.
But my artistic abilities aren't that strong. But a creative outlet to analyze these feelings is to, describe the emotion.
Yeah.
So when you're feeling something, really describe it in your own head. Like, okay, I'm feeling this tightness in my stomach. And then ask yourself, is it moving fast? Is it heavy? Is it really get into the nitty-gritty detail of describing it? Think about what it would look like if you could animate it or if you could draw it. Think of a color that it could represent. Does it feel like a red energy or a blue energy? Like really, really get into the feeling. So even if you're not creating it, just mentally creating it is really helpful.
Absolutely. I think there's also a part of it with like a feeling and releasing it. I am not as much of a dancer as I would like to be.
Oh, dance is so powerful.
But dance is so powerful, and there's a reason that our bodies enjoy movement. Our bodies enjoy. That's why some people go for a walk. That's why people enjoy hiking.
Runner's high.
Runner's high. You get that feeling of being able to release it. So if you do have, while you're doing this work, trying to name these emotions, trying to describe these things, sometimes being able to physically get out of your body, or if you have music is so powerful.
Yeah.
Create a playlist. Like I have so many playlists. I have an anxiety playlist, which is just like songs that help me deplete from the anxiety. Not that I want to make a playlist that induces more anxiety.
So an anti-anxiety
So an
playlist.
anti-anxiety playlist.
One thing I did in my healing, I've dealt with a lot of shame, and I did a shame healing, like a rage music dance. Like literal just rage and scream and thrash. I was in my car.
Yeah. I have a rage playlist.
Yeah, this was like, I went nuts though. Like I was screaming and punching things and hitting the steering wheel. I bruised my hand. I was thrashing about, and to just rage it out, like find a way to let that emotion out of your body. And then if you can, sit in a meditation right after.
We're not recommending anybody go and bruise their hands or... I mean, heck, you don't have to do anything we say on this podcast.
These are all suggestions.
I mean, these are all suggestions.
For entertainment purposes only.
Like,
we're clueless.
We're clueless. Aaron once got a hole in his tongue from eating too many Sour Patch Kids.
I did do that thing.
I kissed a poisonous frog. Who are we? Who are we?
Oh, man. What's another practice?
Mirror work.
Ooh.
This one, see, I can't even...
And block.
And block.
And throat block.
Oh, geez. And this is something I'm working on. So mirror work involves looking deeply into your own eyes in a mirror and addressing your shadow face to face. I hate confrontation. I'm working on confrontation. This is someone, I can't even look at myself and say affirmations because I can't. I can't do that. So this is for my super strong-willed people and people who just want to get to know their shadow self. And it's really powerful. It's a lot of self-reflection. So taking a couple minutes each day to look into a mirror and speak to yourself and acknowledge the shadow aspects and express acceptance and compassion. You know who does this really well?
Who?
And I feel like such a nerd for saying this. Meghan Trainor.
Really?
Meghan Trainor, guys. Whether you like her music or not, she gets so much flack for the way that she looks because she's an oversized performer.
I would just say she's normal, but yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence is also oversized in Hollywood.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
She gets a lot of flack for being a dominant partner in her relationship, even though she's a woman. Like she gets all these things. So every day, literally every day she looks at herself in the mirror and tells herself how sexy she is. She tells herself how powerful she is, how much she is loved. Like, I know it sounds so cheesy with these affirmations, but then she also mentions the things that she hates about herself. She like, I think she has like a mole above one of her eyes, and she's like, I love that spot on me because that is part of me. Just, and I know it sounds very base level. Obviously, she didn't share a lot of the deeper things of it, but it is that basic understanding of these are things that are not perfect about me, and I can look them in the eye, acknowledge them, and accept them as a part of me in this experience.
I love that. My thoughts of the mirror exercise and so much of what shadow work is just calling yourself on your own crap.
Yeah.
That's all it is. Stop
Yeah.
lying to yourself about things. Just look at yourself in the mirror, and what looks back is you.
Yeah.
In this reality right now. And don't take any of the lies. We lie to ourselves all the time. Mm-hmm. All the time. And so, yeah, I really like that.
It's so silly that we lie to ourselves so often because we are with ourselves all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's why we lie to ourselves, is because
Right.
we're not comfortable being alone. Mm-hmm. I mean, people that haven't done shadow work, they're the ones that are always listening to something. Mm-hmm. They're always with somebody. Mm-hmm. They've always got like a movie on in the background, or there's always noise because they can't listen to their own thoughts because their thoughts are so rude and so destructive. And so they're afraid. They're frightened. Like, for those of you who have watched BoJack Horseman,
Ooh.
he has many demons. He is a very flawed character.
Yep.
And he can't be alone.
Nope.
He can't be alone because he hates himself. And then he ends up hating and hurting everyone around him because he hates himself. Mm-hmm. And we do the same thing on lesser degrees.
Yeah, we do.
We become so angry and hate ourselves for our perceived flaws and imperfections and shortcomings and failures that we lash it out at the world because we can't accept it in our own self. I'm not perfect at finishing projects. Mm-hmm. And so I have a tendency to see people that drop out or quit early and be like, haha, it's like you project your own insecurities on the world all the time.
Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Another practice that we can do is, I've loved talking about dream analysis.
Yeah.
Dreams are your door to the subconscious. Your dreams are telling you what is in your subconscious. Sure, it might be with like a flying T-Rex or some bizarre scenarios in the dream world, but there are elements that are speaking to you. Mm-hmm. I've felt very out of control in a lot of aspects in my life right now. And a lot of my dreams recently, like my dream the other night, I was in my car and the brakes wouldn't work. I couldn't stop. I was out of control. I couldn't stop the direction that I was moving. And yeah, look at those. Look at the messages that your dreams are telling you. Are you out of control? Do you have the control over your life that you want? Technically, there is no such thing as control, and we can get into that in a whole other episode on surrender and whatever. But yeah, I've definitely felt that. We mentioned recently, well, at the beginning of this episode, that life's changed. I have recently started a new job, and it is rough.
El brutal.
It is necessary, but it is rough, and it is something that I'm struggling with, but it's something that I've got to do. So, but yeah, there's definitely elements in there where I don't feel like I'm in control of my own life right now because of that.
Yay. Being honest with ourselves and loving ourselves in spite of it.
Yeah.
That is, I know it's such a cheesy quote, but I love it at the same time. Where it's like the greatest love affair you'll have in your life is the one that you have with yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, like that's the person you spend the most time with. That's the person that you...
Your whole life. You will be with yourself.
That's the story you're going to tell. So why not make it the best love story in the world?
Yeah. And I am a firm believer that you can only love someone else as much as you've learned to love yourself. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I have definitely felt that. The more I've accepted my own flaws and my own shadow, the more accepting I am of others, like we mentioned. So let's get into some benefits of doing this work.
Yes.
And really, because engaging in shadow work can really lead to some of the greatest self-awareness and self-evaluations in your personal growth journey.
Exactly.
Jung believed that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. It is a necessary step.
Pain.
It's just because our egos are so fragile.
Mm-hmm.
They're so fragile. We always have to be the hero or the victim.
Yeah.
And shadow work, there's moments in shadow work where you start to look at yourself and you're like, holy crap, I was the villain.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not to everybody, but I was their villain. I broke them. I hurt them. You know, that's a part of this. And it's hard, but the benefits, again, increased self-awareness.
Yeah.
You are much more aware of your thoughts, your actions, your intentions. It helps you become more aware of the hidden aspects of your personality. By acknowledging and understanding these parts, you gain a much deeper insight into your behaviors, motivations, and emotions. What you're doing is, instead of allowing your behaviors, emotions to control you,
Like a serial killer.
yeah, or just anybody on the street, you know, the barista doesn't spell my name right at Starbucks and I'm instantly offended because my name is so important. Sure, but who cares? You know, instead of feeling the emotion and triggering up right away, what you're able to do is feel and experience the emotion and then decide how you're going to act in spite of the trigger. You this is why free will is such a triggering phrase for me, because we're like, everyone has free will. We get to choose what we want to do. And it's like, do you have free will? Or are you just playing out the behaviors that you've been programmed? Are you just doing what it is you were supposed to do or what you were told to do from birth?
Yeah.
Or are you able to step in and be like, okay, I'm really hungry, but I'm not going to stop and eat this terrible fast food. You know, I can be hungry for another few hours and make a meal at home. It's not like emotion trigger action. It's you break that chain and you gain free will, one would say.
One would argue. So by recognizing and integrating your shadow, by understanding these deeper parts of yourself, you can reduce projections onto other people. Doing your own shadow work is going to improve the relationships you have with siblings, your family, your romantic partners, coworkers, anyone that you really have relationships with. It's going to lead to healthier, more authentic interactions with these people in your life. And you're less likely to blame others for your own unresolved issues because you've gone through the work. You understand so much more about yourself. You're not going to be pushing those heavy emotions and blaming other people because you don't have to live in that blame anymore.
Well, it's because you don't have to be the victim or the hero in every situation.
Exactly.
You can just observe.
Mm-hmm.
I really like to think about it as you do this work, you expand. You become more expansive. You are able to hold your own emotions, your own feelings, while simultaneously feeling and holding those around you.
Yeah.
What I've seen and experienced in some people that I've talked to about healing, especially in a relationship, is one of them will trigger the other, which then triggers the other back. And it's this cycle. It's
tennis.
It's the Ouroboros. Yeah. It's a back and forth. It's a volley. Now, if you're not familiar with the Ouroboros, it's the snake biting its own tail. And how do you end the cycle? You just cut the snake. It doesn't matter where. You just cut the snake and you end the cycle. And so as you do this work and you're able to be more expansive, you then allow the person that hasn't done this work to go through it themselves, because you're not re-triggering them in the process. It's like...
It takes two to fight.
Yeah. It's like I get yelled at because I didn't do the chores I was supposed to. And so then I don't do the chores out of spite. And then you know, it's like, it's this back and forth of like tit for tat. And when you're able to just step away and be like, okay, I feel triggered. I feel engaged. but I'm just going to hold space, and I'm going to be myself, and I'm going to choose how I respond to this. It allows the other partner to kind of work through their own trauma response. Even if they're not doing this work, it allows them to kind of work through it and burn the fire down. You're not feeding it anymore.
Exactly. And I don't know about you, but if somebody, when you see two people and one of them is all fired up and angry, they just want that other person to be fired up and angry as well.
Mm-hmm.
If they're just like calm and meek and listening and understanding, the flames are going to die.
Yeah, it's, you end this like, well, I did this, or she did that, and then I did this because she shouldn't have done that, and then she did this because, and it's like, stop. Stop lying to yourself. You knew you were being vindictive. You knew you were being manipulative. You knew you were doing it out of spite. Stop. Just observe that you were triggered and end it. Another thing that it really leads to is greater authenticity and like we've mentioned, personal healing. But I really want to get into how it can really help with creativity.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about energy blocks in the past, and embracing your shadow can unlock massive creative potential. Many artists and creators find that exploring their darker aspects lead to greater creativity and inspiration. A lot of artists have their dark phases of things that they had to go through, but then it just helps them be able to transform into a new version of themselves. If you think of, I don't know, I think of like any hero's story, they have to face the dragon. They have to fight the villain to be able to come out onto the other side. Bilbo had to go and fight Smaug so that he could come back and write his story for all the other hobbits to see. You know what I mean? You have to be able to face that darkness and come out on the other side to be able to grow and create something else that's bigger than yourself.
I love it. And then what I always like is the spiritual growth of this.
Of course.
I mean, that's what it is. The shadow, these are the demons. You know, these are when you study scripture and spiritual stuff, Christ is the God of the demons and the angels because he mastered his darkness. It's not that it didn't exist. He mastered it. Those demons obeyed him. Now, in our study of demons, there's big ones, and they're like the demons of lust, envy, anger, pride, gluttony. These are the immortal sins that we all have as being physical flesh humans, and they're part of the shadow self, is acting out of those emotions. And mastering those is a huge step forward in the spiritual growth realm.
Absolutely. I think another one, if you think of any villain in any story, it's always led by one of those massive demons of pride or lust or of want or desire or even fear. If you can conquer those things, just imagine how much more powerful you're going to be in your own life.
Again, it'll give you free will.
It will. It'll give you free will. Wow.
What?
Power. Decision making.
Oh, I love it. Well, hopefully Batman. Well, hopefully you learned something from our exploration into shadow work. Hopefully it didn't add to the confusion, and that you're able to take some practical advice from this and really step forward into it and use some of these tools to better your life. And that's our challenge for you this week, to do a little bit of shadow work in whatever form is the most comfortable for you. There's the journaling, there's prompts, there's meditation, dance, creativity, art, music, whatever speaks to you. I really like to lead it with that question, though. So the question that Angie brought up earlier, maybe just ask yourself that one night as you're in bed alone with your eyes closed for 5 or 10 minutes. Why are you unwanted? And see what comes up. See what you tell yourself. For me, it always leads to because I'm not enough. That's usually the core of where my shadow goes to. So just ask yourself that question and see where it leads.
In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Was that a testimony, Phil? Does it feel like I'm preaching?
No,
I'm just really passionate about this.
I
because
apologize. That wasn't my
you're
intention.
good. It changed so much of my life when I went through, because, I mean, a little bit of my story, things fell apart for me. They were on the verge of collapse before it woke me up out of my own bullcrap. And I was able to finally start looking at myself and observing myself for who I was. And it's made the world of a difference. Yes, it's lonelier, but I think it's because a lot of people haven't really ventured this path.
No, and what I meant with that was simply you're just sharing deeper parts of yourself, which I'm grateful for, because those are the delicious pieces of people that are so awesome, because we all can do small talk. We all know each other's favorite colors and whatnot, but being able to understand people on a deeper level is a wonderful thing. So if you can...
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. It's just, if you can understand yourself on a deeper level, how much cooler is that going to be to not only enhance your life, but you're a blessing to those around you.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I hate small talk now.
Yeah.
We had a friend over the other day. Within 2 minutes, I'm like, so tell me about your religious, tell me about your religious deconstruction. How's that going for you? And they were like, oh, okay, we're going right into it, aren't we? I'm like, yes. Oh, man.
You're also a Gemini, let's be honest.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't care what you ate for breakfast. Like, tell me about your soul. Oh, no, thank you so much for joining us on our shadow work episode. Dive into that shadow. Look at your darkness. Mm-hmm. It's not as scary once you look at it.
It never is. No.
What you'll find is it's a lot of inner child work.
It is.
Yeah.
How much freer will you be? How much more will you have in your life when you can just see it for what it is, embrace it, and move forward?
Yeah, it's a part of our reality.
Batman!
Oh, man. And in the name of Batman, good night.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.